Wildlife Center first opened March 28th, 1993, and we've been open every single day since then. Well, I think most people would assume that we take care of wild animals, sort of as a basic service. I think some people don't realize that we have a full veterinary hospital and a full veterinary team with veterinarians and veterinary technicians. We can do everything that your dog and cat clinic can do. We can take x-rays, we can do blood work, we can do surgery on an animal, we can do laser treatments and specialized treatments like that. So a lot of people don't realize that. And for some reason don't even really think that wildlife need it, which I always think is a bit funny. You know, if you're a dog hit by a car, you probably need surgery, but if you're a fox hit by a car, you probably also need surgery. So we have a rescue program which is very specialized, which most people are not aware of and don't even really understand. So our rescue program is doing very, very difficult things. If you have, for example, a falcon that got caught in kite string 70 feet up in a tree, nobody else responds to a situation like that. So we have to get up in the tree, you know, and get the bird out of the situation, which is a falcon who's terrified and he's trying to claw at you, you know, and you have to get everybody back down safely, people and animals. We respond to oil spills. In the wintertime, we have injured animals that find themselves way out on ice that's cracking, you know, so we have training in ice rescue, we have flotation suits for ice rescue. So a whole host of really specialized rescue training and equipment, which is very unique to our facility. And then we also have a wildlife hotline, which has always been a very unique program for us. So it's not that we just answer the phone. You know, we have a lot of training for our staff that answer the phone. We actually wrote the only manual that exists in the world right now for wildlife hotlines. It's a 500-page peer-reviewed manual that helps organizations actually respond to calls about wildlife. The manner in which we handle those calls can in themselves be life-saving without the animal ever being here in our facility to get help. Anyone actually has the ability to report something that they see that's harmful to an animal to the appropriate authorities. Sometimes it's hard to figure out who the appropriate authorities are, and we can help people with that, either to encourage them to report it themselves, or sometimes we will also report it just to make sure that it does get reported. We don't have enforcement authority. We've actually tried to get that in the past, but weren't able to. So there are particular agencies that have to do that. There's a number of challenges certainly for us as Toronto Wildlife Centre. Certainly resources for any charity are always a challenge. Because we're the only wildlife centre of our kind in the whole Greater Toronto area with the services we have, there's enormous demand for our services. So there's just never enough money and time and space to go around. So that's always a balancing act, trying to do as much as possible with not enough resources. But another challenge for us too is just the plain old challenges of working with wildlife. It's not the same as dogs and cats in that they're afraid of us. Sometimes just being in captivity is so stressful for them that will give them more medical problems. They can get sick or injured even just being around people or trying to get out of a cage to get free again. We can't easily find people, whether it's staff or volunteers, that have experience working with wildlife. So that's a challenge, different than dogs and cats, because most people know how to take care of a dog or cat. We typically have to train people here at our facility, so that's also difficult because of the nature of the work we do. We will be moving to the Rouge National Urban Park, and we will be building a new and permanent home, which is very much needed. We've always been in temporary kind of old buildings, and it's time to get into a permanent facility. So it will be certainly the largest wildlife center in Canada and one of the largest ones even in the world. Being in the Greater Toronto area, it's very unique because there's so much green space. There's so many natural areas, and we keep building more and protecting more, which is great, but there's a whole lot of wild animals that come to those areas, and there's a whole lot of people and cars and glass and hydro lines, and it's sort of this perfect storm of creating a lot of work for an organization like Toronto Wildlife Centres. And then it's also going to be a facility where people can come to train if they actually want to go and start programs on their own in other geographic areas. If someone wants to support Toronto Wildlife Centre, certainly we are a registered charity, so making a donation is always very helpful. And that can be done online, or you can find out on our website information if you just want to mail in a donation, or the phone number to call in a donation as well. Our website is torontowildlifecentre.com, and that will point you to all of our social media as well. Some people also decide they want to volunteer for Toronto Wildlife Centre. We have volunteers who work with the animals, of course, but We have volunteers in all capacities, depending on someone's interest and skill set and how much time they have. You know, we have volunteers who help with fundraising. We've got a volunteer microscope repairman. We've got volunteers who help with grocery shopping or with driving animals sometimes. So it just depends on someone's personal level of interest. Also on our website, we have an extensive wish list that we're always updating. So there's always a lot of stuff that we're looking for. And any items that can get donated is something that we don't have to raise the money to buy. There's a couple of really important ways that people can prevent injury and harm to wildlife that I think people don't think about maybe very much. One is by paying attention to what we do with our pet cats. And I have 2 pet cats, and I'm just this crazy cat mother. I've got 1,000 photos I could show you of my beloved cats, and I love them dearly, but I never let them outside by themselves. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is that they would be a huge threat to wild animals. And there are studies that show that cats are a bigger threat to songbirds, for example, in Canada than every single other threat that they've looked at put together. Habitat loss, windows, everything pales in comparison to the threats posed by free-roaming cats. So if you care about wildlife, that's definitely a big way to help them, because the average cat will injure or kill 200 or 300 birds or small mammals each year. It's a lot of animals. But then the cats themselves are at risk from being attacked by other animals or being hit by cars. So my beloved cats, I would never put them in that situation. So it is important to think about what you can do with your cats, as I do with mine, is you can walk them on a leash. The other big thing to think about is the use of these so-called humane traps. And they kind of look like cages. We really beg and plead for people not to use these kind of cage traps. You might think you're doing something humane, like if you see a squirrel that's going into a hole in your attic, and you say, okay, I'm gonna trap that squirrel, and I'm gonna take him to this forest on the way to my cottage and let it go. That adult squirrel probably won't survive now that you've moved it out of its own home territory and into another squirrel's territory. There's a lot of studies that have been done on that. So the adult animal is in big trouble now that you've taken it and moved it away from its home. But almost without exception, an animal living in a place that you don't want it to be living in is a mother with babies. And you're usually leaving babies now without their mother. And wildlife rehabilitators get in a huge number of orphaned baby wild animals each year because their mothers have been trapped and taken away from them. So we can provide much better solutions, either in person or on our website, about how you can solve that problem. It's really easy to get wild animals to move out of an attic or out from underneath a deck without having to cause any kind of harm to the family. For me, just being aware of what's going on with wildlife and helping them as much as possible is critically important. We as human beings have done so much to change the landscape of the planet, and we continue to do so. So for me personally, it's important to give back and to help the other inhabitants of the planet.